Health Pink Dialogue. This is episode number 29, and tonight we are talking about Inter Miami's 6-2 victory over the New York Red Bulls on Saturday night. It was a lot of fun. There was some frustration, and we'll talk about all of it tonight. But as always, I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. How you feeling tonight, man?
Say it one more time for me, man. How much did we win by?
We won by 4 within a very, very impressive 6-2, should have been 6-1 scoreline.
Curse weekend because that penalty was so stupid.
I know.
But we won. We got the revenge. That's all that matters. Inter Miami is now officially the best team in the league. Come and get us.
Officially, by every metric, virtually, and by looking at them play, you see why they have been on a 4-game winning streak. We were a little curious if some of that was, they were playing some bad teams, but ever since they got, I don't think we should be afraid to say it, embarrassed at Monterrey and really looked poor, they have come back with a vengeance. They've won every single game. They're averaging 4 goals a game. They've given up 1.5 a game. So the winning margin is 2.5 goals a game, which is, nice. Vibes are good. And we will talk about how the feelings of Inter Miami, at least for me, changed over the course of those 90 minutes from, maybe we're not as good as we think, to this is the greatest team that's ever played in this league. And it will be a fun journey we're going to talk about. But before we do, I just want to mention there was a roster reveal by the MLS on, I believe, Thursday, possibly Friday. And in that reveal, they showed every single roster in the MLS, who was in what type of roster position, right? A DP, who's getting TAM money, who's on the supplemental roster, who's on the senior roster, who's everything. And so international roster slots, etc. We are going to talk about that in depth on the midweek episode on Wednesday night. And so we're not going to touch on it tonight. I know we haven't touched on it yet, but that's because we're going to dedicate a whole podcast to that roster reveal, what it means for Inter Miami moving forward, what it means for the next couple months, but what Inter Miami can do over the course of the summer so that they can prepare this team for the Leagues Cup and obviously the MLS playoffs and to make a run at the Supporters Shield. So we will be doing that on Wednesday night. And we hope you guys join us for that. Without further ado, though, there doesn't feel like there's a lot else to talk about. Let's just get into the lineup. I've got it on screen here. We had some concerns going in, but I think we felt solid about this team in the pregame show. Looking back on it, though, you highlighted that Cello Wiegand side of the field, and I think that was a really astute observation. We talked about this midfield and how we're not in love with the midfield. We'll talk about that more in this episode because I think we were spot on with both of those. But just looking back at it now, this is a starting lineup. How are you feeling about it in retrospect?
I think you're being a little generous on us saying that we're feeling confident in this team because I remember being nervous for the first time in a while after a fair few games. I actually felt nervous about this particular team. And I think in good measure, the first half proved exactly why we were nervous about this team. As always, this team started really slow. We needed tactical adjustments in game to try and get a result out. We pointed out areas of concern, and those actually proved to be right. But I also mentioned on the podcast that this is going to be that one game where Inter Miami goes and does an Inter Miami where we just beat the opposition absolutely brutally. And in the second half, that's exactly what we did. But it's just hilarious how a lot of our predictions came true. I'm sad that the 7-2 didn't happen because that was one of my predictions from a couple of games ago. And we were so close to getting that. Hopefully in the next game, we can get closer to that 7-2.
This first half of this game, just to go back down memory lane, I predicted a 2-2 scoreline where I thought the New York Red Bulls would be the better team and Inter Miami would have to salvage a draw. And I felt like that's exactly what was playing out in the first half. And I think you said that you expected or you predicted that we would get a massive win. And that was exactly what happened in the second half. So
I said 4-2.
Yeah, but still, I think you said it was going to be a pretty solid showing. And Kudos to you for getting that right, especially in the second half. I wanted to see Gressel sit this game out, or at least come off the bench, and I wanted to see Kremaski start, because I felt like that midfield gave us the structure and balance that this team needed against the New York Red Bulls. Maybe this should just bring us into the game. We really struggled to get the ball into the attacking half, and virtually every time we did, it was because we were playing through balls from deep over the top, or through the lines, but not necessarily pretty build-up play. And that's really frustrating if you're an Inter Miami team at home who's supposed to be the best team in the league, and yet we were really struggling with getting the ball through. What were you seeing there that made you feel like this was happening? I mean, it felt like New York was in control of the game and they were doing exactly what they wanted to do, and Inter Miami wasn't doing anything they wanted to do. And so I want to attribute it to us having a slow start, but it didn't really correct itself after 10 minutes like we've seen over the last couple games.
Yeah. In terms of statistics, we had the ball 60% possession in the first half, but we didn't really do much with it. I don't remember us taking too many shots, or there were a few chances here and there that we created once we linked up really well, got the ball in the final third. But I think 70% of that game we played in our own half, and it was New York. Yeah, and
it wasn't even possession at the halfway line. It was possession in your own final third. Yeah. It was really a struggle for us to push the ball through. And even though you're right, we did create some chances, we got some, long balls through, it didn't feel sustainable or productive, or like it didn't feel like this was the game plan, right?
If I start taking a shot every time Drake Callender boots the ball up, I'll be drunk in like 5 minutes. It was pretty bad, and it wasn't great to watch either, because Red Bull were doing what they set out to do. They were pressing high, they were energetic, they were putting us on pressure when we had the ball, and we should have expected that. We called it as well in terms of how this team struggles to get the ball out. And I think for me, the biggest reason for that was the gap between the midfield and the defense. I think Sergio Busquets was playing really high up, and then Julian Gressel and David Ruiz were also playing as eights instead of falling back when Sergio Busquets was high up. So it just felt like we had three number 8s / number 10s playing in the midfield with nobody to support that defensive line to try and progress that ball forward. And there was just this massive gap in the midfield where Red Bull's front three were having the most, pleasurable time just running around in that area where there was so much space. And as soon as there was a turnover, they were very dangerous because there was nobody from our midfield who's able to track back that quickly. Secondly, I think Gressel and Ruiz do not complement each other, and they do not have that. The midfield balance is just not right. And I don't think this midfield balance or this midfield three should play another game together, because it's just terrible. It really is, because all three are very similar style players.
Sorry, here's the thing. We played Monterrey a couple weeks ago, and we were very bare bones, and even some of the guys that were available were coming off injuries, and so we didn't have a ton of depth. And in that situation, you can understand playing these three as a trio, because they are all professional MLS quality players, and you don't have a ton of options. But because even some of the options we might like, Kremaski was coming back from injury. Yannick Bright missed that game because of a hamstring. Obviously, Redondo was out, and David Ruiz was suspended. So you can understand that these are three professional MLS players, and you can put them on the field together and be okay, as we saw over the last couple of weeks. But they aren't ideal. They don't form a good structure. They don't form a well-balanced structure. And so if you have the options to not play them, which you did in this game, you don't want to see Tata put out that midfield three. And that's what we talked about. And to me, that was the entire reason we struggled in the first half, was because we lost the midfield battle, and it wasn't even particularly close.
Yeah, and I will say this. People may criticize Gressel as a player. I don't think it's Gressel as a player who's struggling. It's Gressel in this particular formation that's struggling. he's just not suited to the style that we're trying to play right now, or the composition in which he's playing is not suited to the player that Gressel is. It just doesn't bring out the best in him. So when we criticize the midfield or when we criticize Gressel, we're not saying that he's a bad player by any means. If we were playing some of the lower MLS teams with this midfield, I'd be more than comfortable. But when we're playing the top level opposition, you want the best composition out there. And I just think the three that we had with Sergio Busquets, David Ruiz, and Gressel did not complement each other. And that's why the change in the second half was so stark in the way that we started playing and what changed, because Matías Rojas is a different dynamism, a dynamic player. He just brings a completely different dimension to this midfield. So I just think it's about compositions and chemistry in the midfield rather than simply saying this player is good or this player is bad.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Let's get into the moments. There was a Frankie Amaya shot from deep that Drake Callender had to make a nice save for, and I want to give credit to Drake because that was one of the better saves we've seen from him in a couple of weeks. Inter Miami has a few chances on the counter, but nothing that's like eye-popping or wide open should have made. And then finally, the Red Bulls cut open the lead with a Dante Van Zier goal. Emil Forsberg is dictating play in transition. He makes a really nice pass to, I'm not sure, but the shot goes off the post and rebounds to Van Zier, who just pops it in. It's 1-0, and it felt entirely deserved. Did you feel like this game was sort of slipping away just because of how we've played so far in that game?
I think after the last 5 games, I've sort of gotten used to the fact that Inter Miami will go behind. That's inevitable. We are going to concede that first goal because that's what wakes us up, which is terrible for us as fans, but it's just the truth of it, right? Especially when we're playing some of these top level oppositions. It just always inevitably seems like Tata set this team up for failure, and then he has to make in-game adjustments to try and fit or do something to get a result. So even when we went behind 1 goal, I was like, this is a long game. If we don't concede another one, I see us coming back in the second half. So I wasn't too concerned. And the one thing that I noticed was there was a lot of space in behind this Red Bull defense. When they were attacking, there was plenty of space to run into behind their defenders. And we were actually catching them a couple of times with Luis Suarez making a couple of runs. And when we were able to break that first press, we had plenty of time on the ball to sustain an attacking threat. It just wasn't clicking together for some reason, but there were chances in this game for us, so I wasn't too concerned when that first goal went in. Obviously, it doesn't feel great to not have another clean sheet because poor Drake Callender, he really needs one for his confidence, but it is what it is.
Yeah, but this team didn't deserve a clean sheet defensively or in the midfield. One of the biggest frustrations when you have a midfield like this, and when you come across this type of team that does what the Red Bulls did and made it really busy in the midfield and made it hard to get the ball to your front three, was that you lose Robert Taylor as like an impactful player. Messi will come back on the ball, but unless you're getting him the ball in transition, he's not really goal dangerous. And so you're really relying on Messi being very magical, and you're relying on Luis Suarez doing something incredible. And while that's not it's nice to be able to rely on those things.
They do play for us, so
right. It's not a great
helps.
strategy going in. And so I was really disappointed with Tata's setup and how the team responded, because we've seen them adjust in the first 10, 15 minutes to what the opposing team is doing and then be okay after that. And while it's frustrating and sometimes we give up a goal in those first 10, 15 minutes, it's only 10, 15 minutes. This didn't feel like
10, 15 minutes.
Well, this feels like we didn't figure it out at all
in the first half.
Not even the first half. The reason it changed in the second half was because we changed the structure of our team, and that was the solution. And listen, we'll talk about the second half, but are there any of the moments from that first half that really stood out to you? They definitely attacked Cello down that left wing, or down their left wing. He stood up for the most part, but they did get over on him a couple times. But anything that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I do want to say, I think the first goal that we conceded when that first happened, I immediately was like, "Ah, Wigan, what are you doing, man? Like, how can you get beat so easily by Forsberg?" Then I saw it again. I think he did the right thing because there was nobody from the midfield who was able to challenge Forsberg in that position, and that required somebody to go up to Forsberg and put pressure on him. And Cello Wigan had to be the one who had to drag himself out of position. And even when he was beat, I don't necessarily think it was a bad thing because everyone was covered. It was just a great shot, and the fact that it hit the post and rebounded came to Van Zier. So I'm not. What I'm trying to say is, I don't think he's entirely to blame for that particular goal, even though I first thought that he was. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. I promise the listeners that the vibe is going to change when we talk about the second half because it honestly felt like a game of two completely different halves to me. And the first half just wasn't a great watch overall. There was one chance that Ruiz had where he found himself in the middle of the box, couldn't get his shot away. There are a few good moments from Gressel where he put a really good cross field ball out that allowed us to get out of pressure, which was really good. But we just didn't have that threat in behind to make too much of chances, I think.
Can we talk about the fullbacks for a minute? Because both were doing something new in this game that we haven't seen over the last couple of weeks. Cello was playing a lot higher, especially in that first half. And I'm only talking about the first half. Cello was playing a lot higher. He was getting upfield far more than he has over the last couple of weeks. And Franco Negri was playing as sort of an inverted fullback where he was coming in to the channels and Robert Taylor was staying wide. And to me, that's why that was like obviously a strategy and, get one of your two defensive, Gressel or Busquets to stay back. So you have a three-man defense. But both of those guys were higher up. And especially on that play, it was the fact that Franco Negri was high and central that made it so that he couldn't get back into the play. And that's why you have that runner is free on that side. I don't want to say it was mistake free because I'm not sure the center backs played it perfectly. And I think if you look it over, Fred could have maybe been in a different position. But yeah, you're going to get beat in transition with this team if you turn the ball over in bad spots. And that's exactly what happened. So, but I guess I want to talk about the fullbacks. Did you notice that or am I crazy? And do you have any explanation for what they were trying to do?
No,
It didn't
Tolkien
really work.
Forsberg had the run of it in the first half. They were all their attack was coming from that side. Like there were so many instances in that first half where they had no pressure on them. And that was by virtue of Gressel playing as a right winger, because I thought he wasn't playing as a midfielder in that first half. And then Cello Wigan playing really high up. And I agree with you. Negri was also quite further up, quite central, where when he was supposed to be a little bit more to the left. So I think it was just the way that it was set up, and it was just a weird. I'm not sure what the tactics were. My initial understanding is that it was potentially to try and get out of the press to overload the midfield and just give more options for someone to pass to. Didn't work, did it?
It didn't work, and it did seem like they were trying to get more guys in the midfield to create more options, and that's why Negri was in there. And then Cello was just like playing down that right wing. And listen, he got into some good spots. He didn't do anything dangerous, but you could see how if other things on the team were going differently, he could have been in dangerous spots to make an impact. But it just didn't work all the way around, and so it was good to see everything change at halftime. Before we talk about, go ahead.
Did you notice that moment where Cello Wigan was playing as a left winger and he was on the same side as Negri and they were combining? And I was like, what are you doing there? And he almost had like a chance. And that just sums him up as a player. I think he's just one of those wild cards who loves to get on the ball and do things, which I really like. So,
but the reason that happened was because he was like the highest player up other than Negri. And so he was like, this is what you do. These are the basics, right? And so, and then he chipped it with, across with his left foot, which isn't as good as his right. And so it didn't turn into anything. But yeah, and I don't think there was anyone to chip it to anyways. But before we get into the second half, I want to spend some time talking about the New York Red Bulls, because generally we do that after we go through everything. But I think they're worth talking about. They're a good team, like really good. And there was a time in this game where I thought, oh, these guys are going to be a problem. I know we don't play them again in the regular season, but if we see them in the Leagues Cup and then in the playoffs, like this is the team to be scared of, in the playoffs if we're going for MLS Cup. And they're a good team. They're well coached. They have dynamic players. If they can stay healthy up top with Van Zier and Lewis Morgan, those are two guys that can score goals. They have talent in the midfield in a way that I'm not sure we even really saw a month ago or 6 weeks ago when we played them. But Emil Forsberg's really good. And their coach is really good, Sandro Schwartz. So what were your thoughts on the Red Bulls at this point, and not just in this game, but big picture?
I really admire them as a team. I think I wouldn't say that they don't have superstar players, because they do. Like Forsberg is a fantastic player. I think Frankie Amaya is really good. Van Zier is underrated. Lewis Morgan's doing really well. But more than that, more than individuals, they play as a team, and they play well as a team. They're well drilled.
They're really well coached.
They're really well coached, and I would love to see Inter Miami at a point where we're this well coached at every single position. Because let's be honest, we're not right now, right? We're not right now at a position where Red Bulls are. And yet we beat them 6-2. So the only thing I can think of is the potential that Inter Miami has is absolutely scary. But anyways, talking about Red Bulls, I think they're going to be...
for a second? Can I stop?
Yeah.
Can I go on a little tangent? Last week, the Columbus Crew beat Monterrey in the Champions Cup semifinals over 2 legs, including a 3-1 win on the road in Monterrey. And, people were rightly giving credit to Wilfred Nancy for being the best coach in MLS. And I think he's a phenomenal coach. But I don't think he is a good fit for Inter Miami, because he's a system coach and he is very good at building into that system. But Sandro Schwartz is not that. This is a tactician. He took a team that plays a totally different style and he turned them in 2 months, or even less, really. I mean, from the get-go, they've been good, into a team that can play a tactically flexible style of soccer. And he can just then move those pieces around for what, the game that they're playing. And he did that last night. He did it against Inter Miami 6 weeks ago with, half of his starters gone. That's the type of coach you want for Inter Miami, is a guy who can move the pieces around to make it all fit in a way that's effective against the other team. You don't want a system coach like Wilfred Nancy. And so I'm very, very impressed and I'm blushing about the idea of getting a coach like that, because I don't think Tata Martino is ever going to be that type of coach.
Yeah, and this is not to say that we're Tata out by any way. It means, we obviously, he's doing a good job so far. We judge him because every coach obviously needs to be judged. And he is doing well with what he's been served. But overall, I think Red Bulls are going to be a deep playoff team, man. And potentially someone that we meet in the future.
John Tolkien, I thought might be a weakness for them, because he would be getting so high up that it might give us some room in behind. And I think that's why we saw Cello so high up in this game, to try and take advantage of that. And yet it didn't work at all. I thought he was really good. And I thought he was one of their most dangerous players going forward on that from that left fullback spot. I think he's one of the best fullbacks in the league. And he's young too, and he's going to get better and better. So yeah, they're a good team, man. That midfield with, Edelman didn't have the greatest game, but Amaya was really good. I think the reason I want to say this is because they were really good in the first half, but I thought they were good in the second half too. I didn't think that they were exploited in a way that was ridiculous. I didn't think that they fell apart structurally. They just got a taste of what it was like to play Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, but I didn't think that they had a bad game. And normally if you give up 6 goals, you think you had a bad game.
Yeah, and that's why my first question to myself after watching that game was Red Bull bad? Was that scoreline too flattering for Inter Miami? Maybe, I don't know, but we really showed up in that you could see the gulf in quality in that second half, because Red Bull still did exactly what they were supposed to do. And we just cut through them like a hot knife through butter, which is saying a lot. And I want to come back to the point that I'm about to make now, but I want to still preface this before we talk about the second half. I think the team that we ended with, the 11 that we ended with, are closest to our best, most balanced team that we can have. I'm not going to say the full team, but I think it's the closest to the best potential team that we have.
I want to talk about that maybe more towards the end, because it was a new thing that we haven't seen this season, and it's interesting to get into. But just before we wrap up the first half, anything else? Because this was the not fun part of the game, and I think it's still important to be constructive and critical about how your team can improve moving forward. Or are you ready for the dessert of what that second half was?
I'm ready for the dessert. Bring it on, baby.
Okay, so the halftime change is we take David Ruiz out and we put Matías Rojas in. I was excited to see that even before I knew David Ruiz was coming out, because I really was happy to see Tata make a halftime adjustment. And then, of course, Matías Rojas is a guy that is new and shiny, and we want to see what he's really got. Tata puts him into the midfield, which I wasn't sure if we were going to see, really. And so that was even more intriguing. We obviously needed to change the midfield structure, and Tata clearly agreed, and he did that. I would have taken out Julian Gressel, but David Ruiz gets the axe. I didn't think he had a tremendous game, so I'm okay with that. But now we have more of a 4-2-3-1 lineup where we have our back four. We have two sitting midfielders in Julian Gressel and Sergio Busquets, and then Matías Rojas was clearly at the head of that triangle, plus the front three. And it changed everything. 48th minute, Messi just sort of dumps it off to Matías Rojas. He takes a little gliding step to his left and somehow gets past two defenders and then just fires it from about 30 yards out. Let's just stop, take a second, and admire that goal, because it was out of nowhere and also amazing.
Yeah, I want to say a couple of things. There are these Inter Miami podcasts that go on and say how good Sandro Schwartz is as a coach, how good the Columbus Crew is as a coach. Can we just admire how amazing and tactically of a genius Tata Martino is? Who would have thought about putting sorry, I'm going a bit on a tangent.
He absolutely got that right, though. He got it right.
That was putting Rojas in the midfield. I didn't think that would work. I was a bit worried when I saw that. I thought, he's putting on another winger. I don't know what's going to happen. How's this going to fit? But fantastic substitution. That goal. Jesus, that goal. We talked about his left foot when we did this entire podcast about Matías Rojas and what to expect of him. His left foot is an absolute bullet. So I knew this was something that he's got in his locker. I just didn't know it would come out in like his second game that he's playing for us.
Only the third minute he was there too.
Yeah, he shimmied, took out both Edelman and Amaya in the same movement, created space for himself, and just beautifully struck that ball. He's an intelligent footballer. He did more in this game than he's done for his entire career with the Corinthians. So that speaks volumes. Fantastic goal.
The way he moves, it reminds me of a U.S. men's national team player named Gio Reyna. And I'm not comparing them as talents yet, but just the way they like float around the field. And I wonder if it looks the same, when you're on field level, because it didn't make sense that both of their DMs were just taken out of the play with just a step over or a step to the left. And yet they both were. He creates the space. He fires it. It's a bullet. It's tailing towards the corner. It's beautiful. There's nothing Cornell could have done about it. Yeah, it was just amazing. It was a welcome to Miami type of moment. And I think that's the type of play that tells you he has to start next game, right?
I'm not sure.
Know, right?
I'm not sure. I'll caveat this, because I think as useful it is having him in the midfield in that position and play that role, I'm not sure if that's a good tactical fit for every single team that we play. We needed to change something in the midfield. We needed a certain link between Messi and the defense, and someone to try and play that back and forth with Messi, the 1-2. I'm sure he's going to be able to play that role, but I'm not yet convinced whether I would play him over someone like a Redondo or a Gomez when they're fit. So I'm not sure if I see the midfield as his permanent position, but it's so useful to have a utility player like Matías Rojas who can fit into multiple positions on the field.
Yeah, and none of our other midfielders, other than Kramaski, who we haven't seen start yet or be given this opportunity, none of them can play as like a real number 10. And so it's cool to see Matías Rojas be that. And we haven't really seen that since Messi got here. I mean, Pizarro was really the last 10 we had, Bryce Duke, etc. So, yeah, we never saw Facundo Farias play there. So it was interesting, and I want to talk about it more. But let's go to the next one because it was in a shorter amount of time between that goal and this goal than what we just spent talking about that goal. And that comes in the 50th minute, 2 minutes later. Matías Rojas forces a turnover. The ball sort of lands at the feet of Luis Suarez, who turns and then tips it forward to Lionel Messi, who finishes probably the least impressive goal of the night, but also we now take the lead. We had a really bad first half. We made a tactical adjustment, and all of a sudden we must be feeling great because we grabbed the lead right back.
We did to Red Bull what they were trying to do to us, press them. That came out of like us pressing them high and Rojas actually taking the initiative to start that press. He won the ball a couple of times, and that was really I was really impressed by his ability to press and intercept and win the ball. But it was very simple. We won the ball high up the pitch, passed it off to Luis Suarez, who I initially thought might be offside, but because it came off the opposition defender, he wasn't. And then a simple layoff to Lionel Messi, and he just bangs it in. Perfect goal. Great way to get ahead.
Perfect goal. Exactly what you'd expect from Messi. I mean, he's going to finish that. It was a Diego Gomez style goal, right? In terms of he created the turnover that created the great opportunity, and he did it high up the pitch in a dangerous situation where your world-class players can get the ball and finish. So that was cool. We saw Matías Rojas have a hustle play in his first game. And to see that again, it's your first game. You're coming off the bench. You're going to go really hard. You're going to want to impress your teammates. You're going to want to impress your coach. And so I didn't want to label him as a hustle player like Diego Gomez after one game, but this was just another play where it was hustle and effort that led to a chance, and we finish and we go up 2-1.
Beautifully done.
The next
we got a few goals to talk about, so
yeah,
let's get to them.
The next one took a mammoth 12 whole minutes to come, but Lionel Messi gets the ball centrally. He kind of looks to his left, looks to the left side of the field, and then plays a ball in the center beyond the defense to Matías Rojas. He takes one touch, and then chips the keeper. Matías Rojas at this point is the difference in the game. He comes on, he restructures the midfield, which changes the entire game, and now he's got 2 goals and a big impact in the third goal. What a start for Matías Rojas, and then this goal was just also class from both Messi and then Rojas to finish with the chip. Beautiful all around.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Corinthians sent us like a clone or a twin for Rojas, because where was this player when he was playing for them?
Listen, when we talked about him, when we officially signed him, we only referenced his time at Racing. We kind of just threw the Corinthians aside because this is the real player that existed at Corinthians, and now he's got talent around him that can help him produce like this. It's crazy to watch.
There are a couple of things about that goal. Messi found somebody to play with in the midfield. Of course, he's got Busquets, but Busquets is more of a deep-lying playmaker who threads the ball in to try and get Messi in behind the defense. He found a dance partner for him in the center, and this is where I challenge you whether this was a 4-2-3-1 or still a 4-3-3 or a 4-1-2-3. Sorry, I've lost the numbers. I thought, by virtue of the way Lionel Messi plays, I thought it became 2 8s in the middle rather than Rojas as a 10. And that's where we were starting to play really well with that 1-2.
Well,
and
let me stop you, because at this point, it wasn't that. Right before this, we take off Julian Gressel and Robert Taylor, and we put on Bright and Kramaski. And then Matías Rojas had gone to the left wing spot. So he was out of the midfield at this point.
Even by the third goal.
Yeah, just 2 minutes before the third goal.
But anyways, they were playing really well together. There was a lot of complementarity between the two of them. The 1-2 is great. I think the fact that they've played 2 games together and they were able to find themselves without, they played like they've been playing for years together. And then that pass from Messi, man. I challenge you to find a single player who would think of making that pass in the MLS or anywhere in the world, honestly.
Not only making the pass, but with the pump fake to look to the left and distract the defense and then make it happen. I mean, it's on Messi's highlight tape, so he can do it, but also to watch it live and in person, or not in person, but to watch it happen.
That finish from Matías Rojas, it wasn't just a chip. He faked a chip and then he chipped it. It was so calm and composed, like he's been playing with this team for years. So the fact that he's doing this in his second appearance for the club, not even a start, he hasn't had a single start for this team yet. The fact that he's doing it in his second appearance I'm really excited for him going forward. Don't want to put too much pressure on him, obviously, but this is a player that has levels that he can show when he's playing with someone like Messi, Busquets, and Suarez. So I think this was one of the best goals that we saw in this game, not the first one that he scored.
Let me apologize. You are absolutely right. That goal came in the 62nd minute, so this was before the change. Let's fast forward a whole another 6 minutes. We get another very impressive goal worth talking about. Lionel Messi has the ball at the outside edge of the box on the side, kind of just patiently waits for the opportunity, and Luis Suarez sort of shimmies back onside and into a position where he can be dangerous. Messi just sort of, I apologize. 68th minute. Messi finds the ball. It's at his waist, and Luis Suarez makes a very acrobatic finish. I apologize for mixing up all these goals.
There were too many to count. I don't blame you.
So that was the acrobatic finish by Luis Suarez, who he makes that goal. I mean, it's a good pass by Messi, but wow.
That pass from Messi was better than the finish, and I'll tell you why. Messi waited for that perfect moment for Luis Suarez to get back on side and for him to be able to find him, because I don't know, man. I don't want to voice lyricals of Lionel Messi as a player because that's such a outdone trend. But Jesus, he's so good, man. He threads the ball through like 3 defenders and just perfectly places it in the middle for Luis Suarez to just
give out awards. We still have to give out awards, so maybe we could save a little bit of the Messi praise until then. Yeah. But yeah, and a good finish from Luis Suarez. That's not a goal that Leo Campana will finish. That's not a goal that Jose Martinez would finish.
And he finishes with his shin, I think. So he really had to adjust to like get there, but brilliantly done.
Yes. Just keeping this going because there's so many to talk about.
Another one. Bring it on.
Goal number 5 in the 75th minute. Messi picks it up in the center circle. He drives at the defense, and then he puts it to Luis Suarez, who gives it back to him, and then he gives it back to Luis Suarez. Suarez goes 5-hole on the keeper. It's 5-1. It's a party. It's been 30 minutes in the second half where we have the right structure for this game, and all of a sudden we're up 5-1, and it couldn't be more fun.
I don't even remember what we were doing at this point to be playing so well. Were we winning the ball in the middle? What were we doing? I was just absolutely dumbfounded by the way that we were playing in that final third. It was like every chance we got, we were scoring, and it was so beautiful to watch.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit, because you do get to a point when you're having one of these types of halves where everything's just going right. And I remember this in the Orlando City game where you kind of stop judging like critically and watching it as a sport, and it's just fun, and it all becomes a blur. And this was one of those experiences for sure. But yeah, great give and go. I mean, that was Suarez and Messi. That's the chemistry that exists for the last 10 plus years that between the two of them. So good to see, and just another fun one. And then lastly, 6 whole minutes later, we get Lionel Messi picking up the ball sort of on the right side. I thought he was very slow on the ball, and I thought maybe he was like, let's just run the clock out, kill some clock. And then Luis Suarez makes a darting run, perfectly timed to get a step on the defender. And then Messi, with sort of his left foot, kicks it with good spin and perfect touch to Luis Suarez, who takes one touch past the keeper and then buries it. 6-1 Inter Miami. And again, it was still a party.
I don't know what to say, man. So many thoughts. That pass was really good because it was perfectly weighted outside of the left foot, spins perfectly into Luis Suarez's path, and the finish. He saw the keeper come out. He shimmied against the keeper, took it away from him, and then just tapped it in the corner. Beautiful, beautiful all around. At this point, it just felt like we were on automatic mode. Just running through the gears.
Yeah. There was one other thing I don't really want to spend too much time on, but there was a penalty in the 95th minute. Emil Forsberg does convert the penalty for the New York Red Bulls in the 97th minute. And so the game finishes 6-2 instead of 6-1. Anything on that, or can we just move on?
Disappointed in Wiegand.
Yeah.
I'll mark him up for an award.
There was no reason to do it, and so especially at that time of the game. So, okay, here's what I think changed in the midfield. Before, you had Sergio Busquets playing a little bit higher up and then falling back, and same with Julian Gressel. And David Ruiz didn't do a ton. And so you really struggled to have enough depth in your midfield in order to pass through what was a very tight mid block for the New York Red Bulls. And adding Matías Rojas gave you a player in the midfield that was going to play higher up the pitch and be an option and an outlet to bypass the New York Red Bulls midfield in a way that neither Julian Gressel nor David Ruiz were doing in the first half. That got you the ball higher up the pitch with not a numbers advantage, but at least, you weren't going up against a low block, and it allowed Robert Taylor to get higher up the pitch, Messi to get the ball higher up the pitch. And all of a sudden, the back line of the New York Red Bulls was sitting way farther back. We broke that mid block, and I'm not saying it was the minute that Matías Rojas came on, but after we scored a goal or two, that back line fell way farther back, and it created so much more space between the midfield and the defensive line that allowed players like Lionel Messi and Matías Rojas to get the ball and exploit with time and space on the ball to do the things that they do. And of course, they have the talent to make incredible things happen. To me, that was the difference in the game, was by restructuring the midfield, you create more space in the opposition's midfield, and then you create space. Once you do that, you have the defense of the Red Bulls fall back, and then you have space in the middle there. And all of a sudden, your great players can do what great players do. That was, to me, the whole difference in the midfield battle.
Yeah, I would agree with you to large parts. I think the idea in the first half, and the reason I think all three of our midfielders were playing slightly away from the defense and slightly higher up the pitch, was because so that we could slot in someone like a Negri and a Cello in the middle and then create that midfield overload. But the problem was that neither Wiegand, nor Negri, nor Gressel, nor Ruiz are Sergio Busquets. The one person that we wanted to get on the ball was not getting on the ball in that first half because he was slightly too high up the pitch. And there was a lot of gap between our defense and our midfield. And as soon as Matías Rojas came up, I think he had the instructions of being that free-floating midfielder who could potentially play as an 8, come back and take the ball from Sergio Busquets, link up with Messi, be a little bit more of a free roam number 10/number 8, push Sergio Busquets slightly back, give him the opportunity to try and dictate play from the deep. And that automatically starts to link everything, because then Messi doesn't have to come back too far back. Then Robert Taylor can make the runs in behind, because we've got players who are capable of putting that ball in behind with Sergio Busquets. So I think for me, it was a combination of pushing Sergio Busquets slightly further back and just the profile of Matías Rojas and his ability to take the ball and run with it and then play back and forth really helps, because I think Gressel tries to do that with Messi, but I don't think that's his play style. And Ruiz has been instructed to be more of a destroyer number 8 rather than a creative number 8. and he's good at disrupting the opposition, but he's not good when we've got the ball. That's why I think when we're in possession, Ruiz is missing. So having that hybrid 8-10 floating midfielder in Rojas and then allowing Sergio Busquets to get in the middle really, really helped.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the style of player that Rojas is. The fact that he can dribble well and you're comfortable with him on the ball and he's going to find good spaces, but also he can carry the ball into those good spaces. That's something that we don't have on this team in the midfield.
And he's press resistant.
You're right. And so that to me is is a huge benefit. And, again, we'll talk about the midfield a little bit, but I really liked him in the midfield, dude. I really did.
Yeah, I will say I didn't expect him to be in the midfield or be played in the midfield. I thought he was brought in as a left or right winger, but kudos to Tata for seeing something that none of us did, because he looks good in that midfield, and he's, again, a potential option.
And we shouldn't be surprised because he's played as a number 10 before, and he's coming from a league where you have to have that sort of skill level to play even on the wing. He's not a headless chicken type of dynamic winger, right? He's a very composed, again, he just floats around on the ball. It's really fun to watch. But and so we shouldn't be surprised that he can play as a 10. But I just thought with the way this team is set up and with that creative ability coming from the right side in Lionel Messi, you didn't really need that from the midfield. And yet, if you can get the type of defense that we've seen over the last couple of weeks from your midfield, and then having two midfielders dedicated to that, especially if you put Yannick Bright and Sergio Busquets there, you can free up that third midfielder to play as a real number 10 like Rojas did in this game. And I really liked it, honestly. I think he might be more effective in that role than he would be as a left winger. But of course, it's too early to tell all of that. But I thought it was really promising, and it's something I'll be looking forward to seeing more of moving forward.
He played better as a left winger in this game than he did as a. He played better as a midfielder in this game than he did as a left winger once Robert Taylor was off, because I think he had more of an impact playing in the middle.
I agree. It's because he plays centrally and he combines so well with Messi. I think that the two of them being closer to each other is a benefit.
Helps. Yeah.
And then, you see sometimes Messi goes back to get the ball because we're struggling to get the ball forward. And I think if you have a guy like Matías Rojas, he can be the guy that does that, which allows Messi to stay higher up. And then he has the quality to move the ball even further towards the final third. So I really liked it. We have an abundance of riches in the midfield. And so I thought maybe that was why we wouldn't see him there, just because we have so many good guys there. But it was really nice to see.
And you said something really interesting here. So when Lionel Messi falls back to get the ball because it's not coming to him, when he needs to go in deeper to try and get initiative, he leaves a massive gaping hole in that right wing central number 10 position, right? Because that's usually his position. So we automatically need somebody to try and go and fill that gap in when Lionel Messi is coming so far back into the midfield. In this team, in the first half, that was Gressel's responsibility to go in the center and maybe overlap Messi so that Messi's coming into his position.
It wasn't Gressel's, it was Cello's responsibility.
Right? No, so in the center, I don't mean the right wing side. I mean the central side. Okay. Yeah, because I feel... So what I'm trying to say is when Messi never plays the right wing position entirely, right? He always plays as a hybrid right winger / number 10. He never plays as an out and out right winger. So when he's in the middle, I think Gressel or Ruiz, one of the two midfielders, needs to be the one who goes further up, overlap, and then try and make that link between the midfield. None of them were doing that. Gressel was going too far wide when Messi was coming back, or he just was staying in his position. Matías Rojas was the opposite. He was taking up positions that Messi would normally take up. And that's the difference. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself correctly here, but on paper, that's what I saw that I think changed the game for me.
You're right, and I agree. And I think that's the type of thing that none of our other midfielders can really do, other than maybe Busquets if you play him higher up. But yeah, it was fun to watch. It really was. Surprising that a six goal half is fun to watch, but Yeah, and I want to also give Matías Rojas credit because he was the catalyst that changed this game, right? Messi played in the first half, and sure, he got a few breakaways, but it wasn't anything particularly dangerous or particularly that you could rely on to keep happening. Same with Luis Suarez, right? And so Rojas coming in was the catalyst that changed how we did everything, and his skill and his positioning was excellent. Okay, let's talk about Tata Martino for a few minutes because I think we talked about how maybe he didn't get it right in the first half, but that he definitely got it right at halftime. And not just the fact that he knew what change to make, but that he made it right away. He made it at halftime. He brought Rojas on. He restructured the midfield. From the 45th minute on, he did everything perfect, right? And who knows when he decided I need to do this, right? It had to have been some point in the first half. So I do want to give him credit for getting the changes right.
Yeah, so we always, I think, rate Tata on 3 metrics, right? So his team selection, bad. Cross, didn't do well on that.
Yeah, not great.
But that change that he made in the second half, that I don't think anyone predicted to play Matías Rojas in the middle. Maybe someone did, good for them, but I did not. And I thought that was a tactically very astute move. And he deserves his credits for that. He deserves his flowers for that because not only that, but also he brought on Kramaski and Yannick Bright at like the 60th minute mark, which I was so happy to see because he didn't wait for the 75th to the 80th minute to bring these players on, which just meant that we were just chugging along. We at no point did our team start to taper off or get fatigued. We were constantly making the right changes, bringing in the right players, bringing in the fresh legs. So yeah, I think throughout this game, his substitutions and in-game management were spot on, and he deserves credit for that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I didn't think he got the lineup right, and I think that came out of – and listen, I think it's understandable because this is the same lineup he's had over the last couple of weeks when he's gotten results. And not just results, but like convincing results, right? We went on the road to beat Sporting KC, and we lost Diego Gomez to injury, so he had to take him out. But, that David Ruiz was the natural replacement. Last week, Luis Suarez did get 60 minutes off. But other than that, he's kept this same lineup ever since Jordi Alba got hurt, and it's gotten him results. So you can understand the desire as a team, as a coach, to reward your players that are getting you results, right? We're coming off of a 4-1 victory against the New England Revolution. But for this game, against a significantly better opponent than the Revolution are really bad right now, and the Red Bulls are really good. You wanted to see a different midfield. And we talked about it in the pregame. We talked about it in the midweek episode. We talked about it in the postgame for last week's episode or last week's game. And it didn't happen. So that's frustrating. And it was the wrong decision to not make the change. So, marks off for that. But you're absolutely right. He saw in the first half he needed to make a change. You're not going to, in a game like this, you're not going to take a player off in the first half to make a tactical change. That's just rude. But, he makes the change at halftime, and he gets it absolutely right. In the 66th minute, like you mentioned, he brings on Kramaski and Bright, some fresh legs to help you solidify the game. You're up 3-1, so it's not over. There was a point when it was 2-1 where Emil Forsberg got a really nice shot off. It just happened to be right at Drake. And so they still had some bite in them, and you're up 2 goals, which can be a dangerous spot. So he brings on Bright to kill the game. Robert Taylor, I didn't think had a great game, so he takes him off and he puts Kramaski in the midfield. You have a lot more athleticism. You have a lot more defensive bite. I thought that was great. And then in the 84th minute, he brings on Campana and Noah Allen, who are guys that are real players for this team, and you want to make sure they're getting minutes, even if there's not going to be obvious opportunities. When you have several goal lead, that's when you get these guys in to make sure that they feel like they're a part of the team. So A+ for both in-game management and his substitutes. I thought he did really well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm starting to think, or I was starting to think, that Tata was kind of getting off the hook because of how amazing Messi and Suarez were playing. And, they were kind of getting us out of a bind because, let's be honest, this team doesn't start really well. And that comes down to coaching and tactics, because obviously the instructions at the start of the game aren't right for this team to always go behind in the first minute, in the 10th minute, in the 45th second. So there's obviously something off there. And before this game, I was slightly concerned about whether Tata is going to ride off into the sunset just on the shoulders of Messi and Suarez and our quality in the starting 11. But in this game, he showed that the quality was there. It wasn't living up to its expectations, and he had to make the changes to make sure he got the best out of the team. So hats off to him for that.
Yeah. Nothing else to be said. He is, listen, he's not a pure tactician. That's just not his style. And he's not a system coach. And especially the system coach is not what you want for a team with Lionel Messi, because you have a talent advantage in every single game you play. The goal for the coach is to not get in the way of that talent. And especially now that we have a little bit of health, this Inter Miami team is going to be better than every team we play in this league up until the League's Cup at least. So all you have to do as a coach is make sure you put your guys in positions to succeed. You don't have to, teach them a system that's going to succeed. You don't have to be the main star of the team, right? You just have to make sure that you're not costing them. And then you just let players like Lionel Messi shine and Luis Suarez. I mean, there's so many players on this team that are excellent players that that's really all you have to do. And so the expectation for him is to just not mess it up. And he did good today.
So what I'm hearing you say is that Tata Martino is the Don Carlo of the MLS, yeah? Just give him a cigar and he's basically Carlo Ancelotti, isn't he?
Well, if you have Lionel Messi, you have Lionel Messi. Am I right? So
yeah, that's true. That is true. That's something that Carlo Ancelotti never had. So,
anything else about this game before we get into awards?
I'm just glad we showed some grit to come back in the way that we did, and it was a bit of a runaway at the end of the day. Let's be honest, 6-2 is a big scoreline that New York's going to be recovering from for a while. And we spoke about this in our pregame show, that whoever wins this game has the momentum in their hands, because the next 7 games for Red Bull are looking very, very easy. So if they won this game, they would potentially overtake Inter Miami eventually in the rankings. And now we assure the fact that we're on top, out and out. And now we can go into the run of 6 games before the international period starts, where we can be happy with it.
Yeah. If I'm just pinpointing, I think the New York Red Bulls, FC Cincinnati, and the Columbus Crew are the 3 teams in the East that I think we're going to be competing with until the end, or at least those are going to be the top 4, I believe, assuming nothing, crazy changes in the summer transfer window. We haven't seen Cincinnati or Columbus yet, so we can really only go off of this game. But this was the difference between a 1-point lead over the New York Red Bulls and a 7-point lead. And like you said, the next 7 games, we could be blowing out the competition in terms of where we're at in the table, or we could be in line with them, even if we're first, even if we're only in first by 1 or 2 or 3 points. That's not something you feel good about going into Copa America, where we have a lot tougher of a schedule and we're going to be without Lionel Messi. So yeah, it was a big game. And to say, listen, we are the best team, don't you forget it, was, I think, a statement, right?
Yep, for sure.
Okay, let's get into our awards. As always, we give 6 awards. We give a Miami Man of the Match. We give out the Heron That Flew North award, which goes to the player that was doing the wrong thing. And then we give out 2 individual awards each that we oftentimes make up on the spot, or if we're extra prepared, we come with in advance. Last week, you gave out the Man of the Match, which means this week it's my turn. And I think this is the easiest one I've ever given out. Lionel Messi, 5 assists and a goal, 6 goal contributions. First player in MLS history to have 5 assists in a game. First player in MLS history to have 6 goal contributions in a game. And by the way, if you go back and look at the assists, the first one is sort of lucky happenstance, but the other 4 were all well-deserved assists. So phenomenal game from the GOAT.
What does it say about your team when your striker has a hat trick and he still doesn't get the Man of the Match?
Yeah.
That's saying a lot. I'm glad they both play for us and not another team. What a player, man. Now I can wax lyricals about him, right? What a fantastic player. his assists were phenomenal. They were not regular passes. He made them look like regular passes. They were not. So the fact that he's still doing this at 36 in the MLS just goes to show that he's motivated, he's enjoying his football, and I'm glad that he has players around him who are able to enjoy that, or compliment him in a way that allows him to do so much good stuff with the ball. Because sometimes what happens is when a great player comes to a team and he doesn't have the right players around him, he can suffer, sulk, and just, you know, be burdened by the responsibility that he has to take the team up and up and up. Messi is enjoying that burden. He's carrying this team on the back of his shoulders with a lot of effort from everyone else around him. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch. I just hope he stays fit for the rest of the season because we need him. We just need him.
Okay. Since Lionel Messi came back from injury, he came back in the second half of that Colorado Rapids game. He has, let's see, 1 goal against Colorado, 1 goal against Sporting KC, 2 goals against Nashville, 2 goals against the New England Revolution, and 1 goal against the New York Red Bulls. Similarly, he has an assist against Sporting Kansas City, an assist against Nashville, an assist against the New England Revolution, and 5 assists against the New York Red Bulls. So just in the last 5 games since he came back from injury, discounting the Monterrey game, which, by the way, he's also had an assist in that game. This is the best run he's had. I'd have to go back and look at the stats from the Leagues Cup last year, but this is ridiculous. It's a goal and an assist every single game, seemingly. Going back to the assists, that first one was happenstance, right? He just happened to be the guy that passed the ball to Matías Rojas. But the other 4, you have the ball that goes to Matías Rojas, where Matías Rojas chips it. That's an incredible assist. The acrobatics to Luis Suarez, that was a great assist. The last assist where he gets the ball to Luis Suarez for the tap around the goalkeeper, I think that was the best one, honestly, in my opinion. And then the give and go to Luis Suarez in the middle. All 4 of them were talent, and all 4 of them were deserved. And by the way, none of these assists were the MLS hockey type assists where you get credit for being the guy to pass the ball to the guy that passes the ball. These were all well deserved, well earned, and it's incredible. Oh, and by the way, he had a goal too.
There was a lot to catch up on. This game was a lot. We could do a 3-hour podcast on this alone. So yes, he was the deserving man of the match. I would have also given this award to him because I don't want the wrath of our Miami fans on me. And there was no other better player to give it to.
Okay. Before we go on, I just want to say this. He's got 23 goal contributions in 11 games this season. I think that my numbers might be wrong because that doesn't even look right or seem possible. Again, that's 2.3 goal contributions per 90 minutes. It's insane. Okay, take it over. Talk to us about the heron that flew north because, again, I don't want to talk about Lionel Messi for the next 3 hours. I do, but I don't want to record it.
I don't want to give this award, man. This is so harsh. We just won 6-2 and you want me to give an award for the heron that flew north?
Okay, just to remind our audience, the heron that flew north is the award we give to the player doing the wrong thing because Florida herons, they don't fly anywhere for the winter and they especially don't fly north. So if they're doing that, they're doing the wrong thing, just like our heron that flew north, who for today's 6-2 victory that Saur is going to very harshly give it to, the heron that flew north is?
I'm going to do a cop-out and give it to the lowest rated player, and that's Marcelo Wiegand. It was a toss-up between Nico Freire and Marcelo Wiegand because I think Freire had a few giveaways that I wasn't best pleased with. But for me, I think it was Cello just because of his boneheaded and idiotic penalty that he gave away in the last minute that ruined our 5-goal victory over Red Bulls and the ability to brag that we beat them with more goals than they beat us. So for me, even though he didn't do too much wrong in this game, he did give away that penalty and had some sort of responsibility for that first goal. The heron that flew north award goes to Cello Wiegand.
I think that's fair, especially for the I mean, his penalty gave up a goal, and in most games that would be more than worthy of getting the Heron that flew north. But obviously, when you win 6-2, it kind of gets forgotten. But yeah, he was doing more going forward in this game than we've seen from him. And so I wonder how that affected his defense, because we've seen him be a lot more defensive and stay back a lot more. So I'm interested to see if that continues, or if this was a thing where Tata Martino thought there was a chance to get an advantage down that right side. And, because it didn't even feel like in the second half like he was doing it that much. So, yeah.
Yeah, he just seems like one of those players who gets carried away a little bit during a game, and he has fun, and I enjoy seeing him play. I don't think he was bad by any means in this game. Yes, at least he had fun at the Grand Prix. If your team wins 6-2, anyone would have fun at the Grand Prix. But yeah, we had to give it to somebody, and I think he, just for that one mistake, he needs to take responsibility for that. But overall, decent game from him, decent game from the entire back line, so good for them.
Okay, my first award is called the Prima Ballerina.
I mean, Matías Rojas.
No, it goes to Luis Suarez.
Oh, come on. I had an award for Luis Suarez.
I hope you have an award for Matías Rojas, too. 3 goals, and I didn't even think he wasn't even my top 2 consideration for man of the match. And yet he had a hat trick in MLS. It was like it wasn't a quiet hat trick because there were some amazing goals. Just taking a subtle touch around the keeper and then banging it home. You see strikers in every league in the world screw that up. Schneider Borgen would have screwed that up. Leo Campana might have screwed that up. And yet he did it with just the utmost, casualness. Obviously, the spin around acrobatic goal that this award is named after is very impressive. I thought he can't run, but he can still dance. The body control in this man is incredible. And we saw some of the timing and spacing that he's so, famous for in this game and all of his goals. I thought he was just phenomenal in this game. Well, in the second half.
Yeah, I had the Scotty Pippen award for him because even Jordan needed his Scotty. And I think Luis Suarez is doing the perfect job of being that dance partner for Lionel Messi. He's great, man. He's just so good. He's missing in games and then he scores a hat trick. Like, that's phenomenal. He works hard as well. I won't say he doesn't work hard, but he's not a fast runner. He's not a traditional striker anymore because he doesn't have the legs to outrun the defense, but he just finds the spaces. He's so intelligent in making sure that he's in the right spot at the right time. That, I think it was the goal where he scored from the right-hand side, where Messi passed the ball to him from the right-hand side and he turned the keeper and then shot the goal in. If you see, he's waiting for the exact right moment to run. He waited twice before he actually made a run. If it was any other striker, they would have just ran immediately and hoped that they're onside. He waited before Messi has the chance to make that perfect pass and then ran into the right space. His IQ is phenomenal and he works so well with Messi. I'm glad he's here because I don't know how long we get to enjoy him for, but I'm just glad that he's kicking off in a way that nobody ever thought he would. And he's putting up MLS MVP numbers if Messi wasn't here. So,
yeah. Speaking of those numbers, he now has 19 goal contributions. He also, three goals, but he also got an assist on Messi's goal. So 3 goals and an assist in this game. He's now up to 12 goals on the season, 7 assists, 19 goal contributions. Again, that's 1.6, almost 1.6 goal contributions per 90 minutes. It felt like he was in a little bit of a funk. After that New York NYCFC game, he got saved a couple times in that game, and he got into a little bit of a funk. Wasn't great against Monterrey. Last week, he got that goal late. He got the 4th goal in the 88th minute, 86th minute, or something like that. And I thought, I wonder if this is going to trigger him into being back to who he was for the first couple games of the season. And it feels like so far so good, right? He is now back on track to be the MVP runner-up.
Yeah, if you end the season right now, if you give the award away right now, I don't think it's going to change for the course of the season. They've already hit numbers that players would hit for the entire season. So this is absolutely mad. But I will say this, Suarez does hit funks from time to time, if that's a word. He will have another funk for a couple of games. He'll be a little bit sulky here and there if he doesn't have a good game. But then he comes back with a hat trick. So that's just the kind of player that he is. And I don't mind that at all because I think we have enough goal scorers in this team, but he shows up in the right spots when we need him to in the big games, and that's all that matters. Except Monterrey.
Yeah, well, we'll see if he's there for us when we need him in the Leagues Cup and in the MLS Cup playoffs. But yeah, another phenomenal game, and it's hard to imagine a guy getting 3 goals and an assist and not winning man of the match. But maybe more prestigious, he wins the Prima Ballerina. Let's hear your first award.
So my first award is the Crown Wears Heavy Award.
The Crown Wears Heavy. That goes to Matías Rojas.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, what does it mean?
He set the expectations too high, man. He set the expectations too high. He's taken the crown of game changer away from someone like Messi. He set the expectations and now he has to perform. I think that's just valid. Fantastic first couple of games. Obviously, in the first game, we barely saw him, but he had involvement in goals. In the second game, he took the game by the scruff of his neck. I haven't used that one in a while, so I'm going to use that again. He took charge, took responsibility, brought on in the 45th minute. So Tata brought him on to change the game. He knew he had a responsibility. He didn't shy away from it. And now he wears that crown and it's going to sit heavy. So he better be prepared to have the spotlight on him because he deserves every second of it.
Everything you said, I agree, and I couldn't have said it better. So I'm just going to ask you, he has to start next weekend or not? And what will Tata do?
I think Tata will start him next weekend.
Do you think he'll start him as a 10 or as a left winger?
I think he'll start him as a left winger. I think he's going to give Robert Taylor a rest.
I should just add this. We do play next week, 3 games over the course of 8 days. So we will have a midweek game, not this upcoming week, but the following week. So we play Montreal, and then there will be another game in the midweek against Orlando City. So we might get some rotation in this Montreal game.
Yeah, I think Robert Taylor is going to sit this one out because you have to play someone who's had 2 goals, right? So,
and that level of chemistry, right, and impact. Yeah, it wasn't just tap-ins; it was, game-changing plays.
Exactly, and I think I really like the fact that he can play in 2 different positions and have different sort of impact. Because if we're struggling during a game, he's playing in the left wing position. And we're struggling to take control of the midfield. Just take a midfielder out, put him in the midfield, and get Robert Taylor on. That's 2 positions that get changed because of 1 substitution. So it's fantastic to have that level of player in your team.
I don't know how much we talked about this, and maybe we did, and I've already forgotten, but it felt to me like he was better in the midfield than out on the wing. You agree? Okay.
Yeah, we said that already, and I agree with you. I think at that time, the game was already quite... like it was done and dusted, so maybe he didn't need to do as much on the left wing, but he just looked better in the midfield. Now my question would be, when he plays in the left wing, does he play any different for 90 minutes? Like, does he come in, does he cut in and still has that number 8/winger position and plays a little bit of a floating role?
Well, here's the thing.
We'll have to see.
Here's the thing. He's very left-footed. We saw the left foot, and it's magnificent. And we've talked about that since we signed him. But so I don't think that goal was a surprise, other than just we watched it and it was amazing. But when you're in the midfield, you have more space to use your left foot than when you're on the left wing. So maybe that's part of it. Okay, my next award is the Lucky Charm.
I'm trying to think. The lucky charm. What does this award mean?
This award goes to the player that comes on and a difference is made. I have to say the person, and then
Yeah,
it'll make more sense.
Yannick
Go ahead.
Bright.
It is not Yannick Bright.
Oh,
It
Benjamin
is
Kramaski.
it is instead Benjamin Kramaski. I have a stat for you that's ridiculous, but true. Benjamin Kramaski has played 4 games off the bench, 71 total minutes. 71 total minutes. Not even a full 90 yet. And in the 71 minutes that he is on the field, Inter Miami has scored 6 goals in the 71 minutes he's on the field. 3 on Saturday night's game, 2 against the New England Revolution, and then 1 against Sporting Kansas City. He's been on the field for 71 minutes, and Inter Miami scored 6 goals. He wasn't directly responsible for all of them, although he did have a goal. And he was directly responsible for another one, both of the goals against the Revolution. But I just think our team plays better when we have an outlet like Benjamin Kramaski on the field. And I don't think it's a coincidence that when we put him on the field, we run up the score.
And I would say this, yeah, it's not lucky that this happens. It's actually, there's a reason for that. And I would say Matías Rojas and Benjamin Kramaski are closer in their profile and their dimensions and what they bring to the midfield than Gressel Ruiz is to Matías Rojas. In Kramaski, we have that similar player who loves to do that 1-2, can find the right pockets, is available in the right spaces, is not what's the opposite of dynamic? Is not, I'm forgetting the word, but he's very dynamic and he gets in the positions when he needs to. Stagnant. He's not stagnant, and that's what's the most important thing. I think Ruiz and Gressel do a job. They do a job well, but I think they can be quite stagnant at times when we might need them to be a little bit more open and free flowing in their in the way that they play. Especially because we have a player like Messi, we have a player like Busquets who try to do different things. I don't know if anyone saw, but in that last goal that we scored, Messi, Suarez, and Busquets were all in one line. They were all 3 of them were playing up front. So like they like to play with fluidity. So you need players around them who play with fluidity. And that's what Kramaski does.
And that goes back to what I was saying about the coaching, where any team with Lionel Messi, you're not going to be a team based around a structure. You're going to be a team that needs to be free flowing and needs to have good chemistry and also needs to have the right, positional structure in place. And Kramaski is a guy that has that versatility and does that well with Busquets behind him, Messi in front of him. We haven't seen it a ton with Luis Suarez, but I'm sure there too. And so he needs to play more. I kind of wanted to use him as a jumping off point to talk about all of the young players, because I've been worried, and I'm still a little worried, that we're not going to get enough minutes in the legs of our young players for them to develop adequately this year. And so I just want to say that I was also very happy that Campana and Noah Allen came on and got 10 minutes to run around and be a part of the team. And also, you get some film that you can go back and watch and learn from and continue to grow, especially for a guy like Noah Allen. And I was really happy to see them get on the field. And, last year we saw Tata put on like Victor Ulloa for those kind of minutes. And he's a guy on the verge of retiring. I hated that, honestly, just because those minutes can be very valuable for young players. And I mean, very little in terms of development for the older players. So David Ruiz got plenty of minutes in this game. Kramaski got minutes. Noah Allen got minutes. These are your young players. I'm excited to see Ian Frey. I just want to make sure that they're still getting an opportunity to play and develop, because they're very talented youngsters, but they need the opportunity to grow and thrive.
Yeah, and this team's doing something right, and the setup and management are doing something right, because we've got an abundance of good young players coming through the academy. So it's very promising to see, because when you're surrounded with such veterans, with the noise around someone like Neymar, Angel Di Maria, a lot of these big names coming to the Inter Miami team, it's good to see that we're not abandoning our policy of bringing up youth players, and it looks like we've got a good pipeline of those coming in. So I completely agree with you on that.
With that said, the B team did get another loss over the weekend, which was really frustrating. But other than that, let's hear your second award.
So my second award, my second and final award is the Sit Back and Enjoy Award, and the pun is intended.
The Sit Back and Enjoy Award. What's the pun? Hold on, let me guess. Drake Calendar?
Just guess a player.
Drake Calendar?
It's Sergio Busquets, because as soon as he became a little bit deeper and he became that deep lying playmaker, it was all just sorted out. And I think I wanted to take this award to give him a big shout out, because I was his biggest discreditor in the first few games. To the point that I was despising Tata for starting him game in, game out. He's proved me wrong, and I think he's hit form at the completely right time, and is now starting to get really, really promising to see him get back into his full flow. And he just does certain things that I'm like, yes, that's why he's in this team. He wasn't able to make the most of his positioning and ability when he was starting, obviously, in that higher up role. But I think once he has the perfect partner next to him, he's phenomenal and he's back to his best levels. I can't wait for Redondo to be back, because that's going to be a wild, wild partnership that I want to see more of.
Yeah, to me, he's at his best when he has a player behind him and a player in front of him in the midfield. And he had that in the second half. Gressel was staying really far back, and eventually Leonard Bright. And then in front of him, he had Rojas and Kramaski eventually. And I think that's where he's going to thrive in this league. So, yeah, I agree. Good award. Can you remind me who won the man of the match for the third straight time?
Messi.
I'm sorry, who was it?
The GOAT. The GOAT. We had to bring this picture up, right? That does look a little bit like Messi, right? I see the resemblance in the nose and the eyes. Jeez. That scared me a little bit.
Any other players that you felt mentioning? I want to say, though, I looked back on this game and I was thinking about it, and I didn't feel like there was a ton of players that had games that were so impactful they needed to be talked about, either positively or negatively. It was the big three, and then from there it was sort of everyone was just kind of solid.
Yeah, I didn't even notice Nico Freire and Toto Aviles in this game. Were they playing?
Drake Calendar either, Calendar wasn't.
Calendar had a couple of good saves, so I'll give him credit for that. But and he was booting the ball long in the first half, which really it got on my nerves. But I agree with you. It was like it was a blend of everyone was doing their jobs well, and then a few players were really standing out. So I don't think there was anyone worth watching, like worth talking about in too much detail other than the ones we've already discussed. I will say I was paying special attention to Gressel this time around, because we received a comment in one of our videos saying that Gressel is more like a bodyguard for Lionel Messi, and his work rate goes underrated. And I am more than open to seeing what other people might be seeing, because I might view the game with certain biases. So I was looking out for what Gressel was doing. I couldn't see it, man.
I didn't either.
I couldn't see it. My award to him was I'm confused award, because I think that's what he looks like when he's on the pitch. I think he's really struggling to find his footing in this team and his role. I think he's a great player. He just needs to figure out what his role is, and that may take a few more games, and that might take a bit of a time to adjust. Because at times he was popping up on the right wing in that first half. Sometimes he was a little bit further up. He was involved in a couple of good moments, but nothing too significant. He was good when he was sitting back, but also he didn't have much to do when he was sitting back. He was just offering protection to Sergio Busquets. So I wasn't sure what to see there, and I'm not sure if I'm missing something. I'd love to hear from our listeners and viewers on YouTube. Please comment if you saw something different from Gressel that I might have missed, but I think he needs to find a role on this team that's getting away from him for now.
Yeah, someone in the pregame show in the chat mentioned that he talked about why he was struggling in his podcast, and I would be interested in going back and listening to it and seeing if anyone knows what episode he does that, drop it in the comment section, because I would be very interested to go back and listen to it. As always, I like to check Twitter before we wrap up because oftentimes something happens while we're live. And I don't know if this happened earlier, but turns out Lionel Messi is the MVP of the weekend in all of MLS, which is his third straight time as the MVP of all of MLS for the last 3 games. So
Justice for
bravo to him.
Suarez, man.
Well, I don't know. Messi really deserved it this game. Before we head out, though, I want to bring up the table and talk about what's coming up. We are first in the Supporter Shield table. We've got a 3-point lead on Cincinnati in the East. Toronto, we have a 5-point lead. New York, 7-point lead. So in the East, aside from Cincinnati, we're sitting very pretty. There's some teams out west that are keeping pace. But it's looking good. And you feel now like the team is rocking and is healthy and is ready to go on this run.
Yeah, I think the next few games are going to get easier. Let's just hope Inter Miami doesn't do an Inter Miami and lose those easy games, because we have a habit of doing that. So I don't know what we'll expect from the team in the next game, but so far so good, man. So far so good.
We play CF Montreal next weekend. We play Orlando City the following midweek, and then DC United at home the following weekend. The first 2 are both on the road, but it definitely feels like 9 points are on the table for us over the next 14 days or however long that is. Anything else before we wrap this episode up?
I'm glad we were able to get that revenge. Silences some of the Red Bull fans for a little bit, and I'm sure we're going to meet them again, and maybe we get to see a similar scoreline, maybe not. But it's good to prove to the rest of the league that Inter Miami is here to stay, and we're one of the best teams to watch out for. So the only way is up, man. The players are going to come back. We're going to get a few more returns with Redondo, Gomez, hopefully soon, and it's looking promising.
Yeah, Redondo is supposed to come back in about 8 weeks from his injury, which was the beginning of April. So that would put him back in the beginning of June, which feels like it's not that far away. Same thing with Diego Gomez. Same thing with Jordi Alba. This team is getting closer to being fully fit. We got Christoph back. We're getting Ian Frey soon. So it's exciting times for Inter Miami. Everybody, thank you for watching this episode. We really appreciate it. We will be back for a midweek episode on Wednesday night, where we'll talk about the roster and anything else that's going on in Inter Miami's world. And then we'll be back, as always, for the pre-game show next Saturday. We always do it an hour before kickoff, so we'd love to have you guys join us. It's always a lot of fun, and it's a good way to get out the nerves in the hour before kickoff to sort of make the game happen and not just be nervously twiddling our thumbs from lineup to kickoff. I just want to thank you, Saur. I know that you had a very busy weekend and you still made time to do the pregame show with us on Saturday evening. And so I really appreciate that. And for everyone that followed, I really appreciate it. We will see you guys next time, and we hope you enjoy your evening.